Hey guys, my name is Leo and today I'm going to show you how to make the intro that you just saw with a new software on the market called D5. Now, disclaimer, D5 reached out to us to sponsor this video and give them a try. And so far we found this to be a solid piece of software that's easy to learn and gives good results. As an overview, D5 is a real-time ray trace enabled rendering software that allows you to quickly render out your projects as you design them. And while they're still fairly new and missing some features, they are constantly adding in new features based on community feedback. And as a rendering engine, it checks a lot of boxes that I personally look for in my rendering workflow. The first and foremost of this is real-time ray tracing. Ray tracing, in general terms, is a rendering technique for simulating light rays within a scene, which can give amazing photorealistic results. Traditionally, this required many hours for the CPU to calculate, but can now be done in real time with a GPU. Gone are the days where you had to wait hours for a single rendering, which means you might actually get some sleep before deadlines now. Though, just a heads up, you will need to be using one of the newer NVIDIA RTX graphics cards to use this feature, which means you might still need to pull a few all-nighters to camp out and attempt to buy one. The next thing I usually look for is ease of use. Now, this is where these quick and simple rendering softwares really shine. Without all the bells and whistles to distract us, we can really focus on quickly pumping out renderings without much setup. So for those of you that just want something that works, these fast and simple rendering software like D5 is a great option. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get started on the tutorial. So for this tutorial, I will be starting with a model I whipped up in Revit. For those of you who uses Revit, we all know how limiting it can be to model in Revit, but I still decided to go this route since BIM is all the rage these days. This being said, D5 also supports other software such as SketchUp, Rhino, and 3ds Max with modeling pipelines that can give much better results. From here, you can just download and install their plugin and click a single button to link your modeling. What's awesome with this is that it's a dynamic link, which means whatever you change in the Revit model will be reflected in D5. Now that we have everything linked in, we can see that the main window is just one large viewport, with some basic controls up top and to the side. Here on the top, you can choose to show and hide the sidebar, undo and redo, create different types of lighting, material brushes, and move tools. Here on the sidebar, you can go between different tabs that can control the sky, the picture, the camera, and the objects within the scene. The first thing you might notice is how nice the lighting already looks straight out of the box. You can, of course, change the lighting and sky very quickly with the Sky tab, either by setting the time of day or using an HDRI. For the HDRI, they already have a few preset ones that should cover the majority of the lighting scenario that you might encounter. But for now, let's just go back to the normal Geo and Sky tab. The next thing you might notice is the lack of materials on everything. To add materials, you can select the objects in the scene, and the material window should pop up. Here, you can see the materials tab is grouped by the map, color, and UV. In mapping, you can choose a template depending on the type of material that you want to make, as well as all the basic sliders for material control. For each of these sliders, you can choose to bring in a custom image to enhance their photorealism. Here you can see the default scales for these objects are very off, so we would need to rescale them in the UV tab. from here we can start messing around with the other sliders to get our materials looking as realistic as possible. One thing to note is that the objects within D5 are determined by the materials in Revit. So you would need to give each object their own material in Revit in order to break up the geometry in D5. They also have a pretty extensive asset library, which can be found under the Asset tab. Here, you can see that there's a tab for materials, models, and particles. For the materials, you can just press on the download button, and once it's finished, you can just drag them onto the object that you want them on, like so. Once again, from here, you really just need to experiment with a bunch of materials to get the look that you want. So let's bring in a wood texture for the exterior here. And scale it up. One annoying thing I found with this early version of their software is that the UV scale resets every time you apply a new texture. Hopefully they will fix this in later versions. Here, you see the ground is slightly too high to see the foundation. So let's go back to Revit and bring it down. Once we do that, we can press the sync button, and it should update in D5, like so. Now, let's head on into the interior. To do so, we can change the navigation style to the footprints here, so we can walk the camera in with the WASD keys. Note how the camera moved pretty fast here, which is kinda hard to control. To slow down for a more accurate navigation, you can change the camera speed slider on the sidebar here. Much better. Now that we can actually move around without running into the walls, we can start on the interior decor. For the interior, we can find another wood texture for the walls from the asset library. And once again, we can scale it up with the UV tab. Now let's do the same for the doors. To make the doors stand out a bit more, we can change the color of their materials in the Color tab. You can really spend a lot of time on this to fine-tune it to your project. But since this is just a tutorial, we'll speed up here. Now we have a nice looking cabin, but the landscape still needs some work. Here, we can go back to the asset library and start putting in some foliage. You can find some foliage packs in the Model tab here, and choose whichever one fits the location best. Here, they have a pretty useful tool to paint your foliage onto the scene. You can simply select which ones you want to paint and control it with the sliders here. So radius controls the size of the brush. Flow controls the density of the generated model. Size controls the size of the generated models. And variation controls how varied they are. Once again, you can mess around with these sliders to fine-tune everything, but I'll speed it up here again. You can see just how much this asset library can help in populating your scenes quickly. They have a lot of different models loaded in already, ranging from cars to people to foliage. They also have a particles asset tab for things like fire and snow, so if you feel like watch the world burn, you can experiment with these. But yeah, that's enough shilling there. Let's get back on track. Overall, our scene is starting to look pretty good. Though before we export our rendering, we can still fine-tune some things. For example, the bed is looking kinda lame right now since it's a default bed from Revit, so we can bring a much sexier bed somewhere else to spice up the scene. To do that, we can go to the Import tab and browse to the location of our model. Now we can bring in this free bed model I found on the internet. And now let's just delete the bed in Revit, and it should be instantly deleted in D5. Now let's just reposition the bed. Add some textures to it. To change up the textures within an imported object, we can use an eyedropper tool to select the material within the object. Now we can change up the material, scale, and color separately on the sheets and pillows. To work faster, we can use the materials brush to apply the same materials as the sheets onto the pillows. This way, you won't need to rescale the UV of the material. Here, we can change up the colors on the pillows to make them pop more. And bam! Our rendering just became 40% sexier. Just like you guys. Alright, now that we have that out of the way, we can export out our visuals. To do so, we can come here to the render button, which gives us a few options ranging from still images to panoramas to videos. This is one of the benefits of real-time ray tracing. Before, when a single image took hours to render, a video would take even longer since we would need to render out at least 24 frames for each second of video. But since everything is real-time now, it's actually realistic to produce these animations for architectural deadlines. Here, you can set the focal length, which would be the same process for stills as well, but for video you would also need to set a start frame and an end frame. The software will then interpolate the frame in between, based on the time interval that we specified. And once we do so, we can see a preview of the scene in real time. And if you want to add another scene like so, you can just come here and add another start point and an end point. And here's another scene. And once we finalize everything, we can just render out, and it should appear in your folder. And here you have it. Just export out a scene for each scene that you want in your video and stitch them up in the video software of your choice. And this wraps up our tutorial video. Feel free to comment down below if you want to see more rendering content like this in the near future.